Good evening, or good afternoon, everyone. This is a regular council meeting for Thursday, December the 14th, 2023. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands of Acadia First Nation, part of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda as circulated? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve as circulated. Moved by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion to approve the agenda as circulated. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 4, declarations of conflict of interest. If any of you have any conflicts of interest during any subject on the agenda, please notify me and I'll make sure that your name is recorded in the meeting minutes. Item 5, presentations. 5.1, Youth Wellbeing Report by Livinus Numfor and Denise Facon, Nova Scotia Health Promoter. So if you wouldn't mind, just come up and hit that red button there. You don't have to have it completely in front of your face, but just angle it a little bit toward you so everyone can hear. Okay. So you have the floor.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll get started. There was a Prezi link forwarded. I'm not sure if everybody received the Prezi link, but you can look at it at any point in time. I'm Denise, my colleague Livinus. We both worked on the Youth Wellbeing Day that was held in the spring. The report was released in August 2023, this August, and so we're just going to provide a quick summary of the results of that conversation, that youth engagement conversation. And so we actually had 125 folks come to our gathering, 50 of which were youth, 75 adults representing approximately 30 organizations. And we looked at youth well-being across 8 domains, and those are outlined in your handouts. We won't go into a lot of detail on those specific pieces or the stats, just given the time frame, but if at any point you want additional information on that, we can certainly provide it. And when we're looking at defining youth, we're talking about youth at about 10 years and older. It's a critical time when youth are not engaged anymore or tend to age out of our day camps and our after-school programs, and they're really just looking for a place to belong. And so we're talking about youth basically 10 to 24, but different organizations have different definitions of youth. And so today we're going to go through the background content very quickly, some considerations that came up as a result of our ginormous focus group ultimately, so what the community said, and then we'll look at next steps. So what are the opportunities for us as a community to act and make some changes that will impact youth well-being? And so just remembering that health really happens in our communities. It happens where we live, work, learn, and play, and where we do those things together. And we took that context in terms of the Wellbeing Day. And so from a background perspective, what we know is that youth are experiencing many challenges. I'm not going to go through all of the stats. There's tons of them, but think of it in 3 main priority areas: loneliness, poverty, and exclusion. And so why is investing in youth important? One reason is that it offsets the costs elsewhere in our system when youth become disenfranchised. If we can ensure that youth are well connected to community up front, it means they will actively contribute to their community, it will help to sustain the community, and it will contribute to the long-term success of our community. And youth who feel connected are less likely to experience adversity, challenges, engage in risky sexual behaviors, experience violence, or use substances. All of the things that, in some circumstances, become concerns for us. And so fostering community connections is ultimately essential to well-being. And it's actually one of those places where we have influence, and the research very clearly shows it has significant impact. So keeping those things in mind when we look at what the community said. And so where youth find connection, and where anybody, senior, anyone, finds connection, is often through recreation. But recreation isn't only about sports. It's about those physical, social, intellectual, creative, and spiritual pursuits that enhance individual and community well-being. So it's a broad definition of recreation. So keep that in mind as we're thinking about the impact of what we need to do to make changes. And so we know that recreation eases everyday stress, it reduces anxiety, it helps balance mood, it enhances learning, and it improves self-confidence. Play and leisure develop independence and social skills and decision-making, and that's critical for youth in terms of understanding who they are. And it creates a sense of belonging and a connection to community. And so what did the community say? So quick snapshot, on your quick snapshots sheet, you'll see the 8 domains. And there were multiple things that pertain to different sectors. We divided up the results by sector. And so some of these comments are things that apply to you as decision makers. Youth leadership and engagement in the political process was identified as a need. Having an opportunity for youth to develop trusting relationships between young people and adults was mentioned. The need for more safe and welcoming spaces to gather and hang out was mentioned several times. Redesigning those youth spaces, or those spaces with youth in mind. We have lots of spaces geared at seniors, with seniors in mind, few spaces for youth with youth in mind. A community hub, free or low-cost leisure. 40% of youth have indicated that they cannot engage in recreational activities due to cost. Youth-based organization dedicated to the development of young people. We used to have a YMCA that was dedicated to youth and youth leadership. It's gone, and that's being felt quite significantly. And so at that day, we looked at well-being across those 8 domains, but we also looked at items related to collective impact. And collective impact is really about what are those things that have a broader and bigger systems need. And so those items are also summarized in the context of the full document. And so throughout the day, we identified 3 top priorities. There were 227 votes cast at the end of the day after we spent an entire afternoon really hashing out what are some of the solutions. And all of those folks who were still at the table voted for their top 3 priorities. If we acted on, it would make the biggest difference. It was the most important to them. Those 3 priorities came in around mental wellness, having a community hub, and engaging youth or a youth voice. And so creating a community hub or youth center to help bring back a youth serving organization fits into that priority. Engaging and including youth in decision making. Funding recreation and community programs adequately, reducing participation costs. And so what are some opportunities? These are things that the community said could make a difference if we acted on. And we know that it's everyone's responsibility to contribute to well-being. The full report is 72 pages. It can feel really overwhelming. And no one is responsible for any one sector, but collectively, if we all take pieces of those, it can make a big difference. And so keeping that in mind as well. And we're doing lots of things. We're doing big things like the Mariners Center expansion. We are doing big things like opening Mariners on Main. And there are already lots of great things happening at the community level that council is involved in across our communities. And so it's not that we aren't doing anything, it's just there are places for us to be able to have additional impact. And then, of course, remembering that we all have impact at different places. And so your impact ultimately is more at that organizational, community, and public policy level. Whereas others will be working at the individual and family level. So in terms of where can we take action? What can we focus on? And so these are things pulled out of the report that have some relevance to council. And so one of those is seeing and advocating for recreation as an essential service, something that all our community members need to have access to. applying an equity lens, seeing it as a public good, looking at our operating models to ensure that, I mean, it would be great if everybody could just go do everything for free. We're not there. But how do we close that gap and provide opportunities where possible? And seeing that as an investment in the people for the people in our community. Helping to reestablish a youth-serving organization, something dedicated to the development of young people around leadership and support. An intergenerational community hub, perhaps. And then, of course, public policy that supports families and youth, and recognizing that those pieces are important. Things like affordable housing, advocacy, reducing alcohol and advertising harms impacts youth, supporting basic income, universal school food programs, removing barriers that limit participation, addressing transportation gaps. So some bigger pieces. And then engaging youth directly. They're not easy to engage. They're likely not to come to this format of a meeting. We can say that relatively for sure. But looking at ways where, you know, you can engage youth and meet youth where they're at. And then enhancing community partnerships. Considerations around what takes place on Mariners on Main after the expansion happens, or what community resources already exist that could be designed with youth in mind. Not everybody is in the town of Yarmouth. Many of your constituents use services within the town of Yarmouth, but there are also sometimes buildings and community halls and different things in smaller community hubs that could be repurposed with youth in mind. So re-examining how those spaces are used and what that looks like. We're in the process of engaging a youth table to bring to life some of the recommendations, the collective impact recommendations within the report. And so we may be seeking support in the future around those actions. And then, of course, opportunities for collaboration and re-engaging community. We're finding post-COVID, community is disconnected. We're in our silos, and so engaging collaboratively is a focus. And so, you know, we can make big changes in small steps. Everybody doesn't have to do everything at once. And really, the big ask here is for council to work collaboratively to develop a municipal action plan to address youth well-being. So what we're asking all of our sectors, councils, education, health, all of them, business, you know, what is the role that you can play in terms of the scope that you have, and what will you commit to focus on to help address the things that have been identified within the action plan. And the youth table, it's forming, but it's here to help support that process as well. Levinas, anything to add?
And coming from the recommendations from the report, there are other actions that have been taking place. For example, we recently hosted a summit at Yarmouth High called Headstrong. It's a mental wellness summit. We had representations from about 8 schools coming from Lockport onto Digby. So that was well attended, and the youth, it made a positive impact to them. We're also having another initiative called the Agenda Gap, which is a mental health promotion for youths to come together and brainstorm what positive changes, how can they involve decision makers to tell them that this is what we need to foster a positive mental health. This is what we need as protective factors, and this is what we need to increase resilience in our community. Post-COVID, like Denise said, hasn't been easy on many of us, especially the youths. So this was an effort just to come together to brainstorm and see where action could be taken as a municipal council, what supports we could have to offer to the youths.
Open it up for questions, yes?
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to you both. This is just so important, and it's such a difficult time for young people. So I do have a couple of questions, and one, young people are so attached to their phones, like so many of us are too, but even if we have more and more things or places for them to go, can we disengage them from technology to get them in to programs? Is that, if the programs exist, are people attending? That's the question.
We get a bit of both of those things. Sometimes we deliver programming and youth don't come because we delivered it. And I think we need to change our strategy. Youth were very clear that they do want to be engaged, that they do need programming, but we need to work with a group of youth and identify what it is they need and then meet those needs rather than just put out kind of cookie cutter programming in different community places, because it likely isn't going to work. And while youth are saying they want to be engaged, it isn't easy always to engage youth. And I think the important piece too is to remember that we have lots of data showing that they're struggling in many ways. They're developing, and we're the adults. And so we need to take the responsibility in figuring out how to make things work for them. And so changing that lens a little bit and working with youth in our community to see what might be possible. Because there isn't one answer and there isn't one way in each community. It varies. And part of this process really is about, this identified some of those broader pieces, but we really do need to dig in individual communities with specific youth about what might work.
Thank you. I also have concerns about parenting, and I think they need some programs too to make sure that they're being the parent and not the teenager as well.
Yeah.
And that's a concern of mine. I know that one of the difficult things is to get young people to volunteer for anything. And I know many nonprofit organizations would love to have youth get involved. So, you know, somehow if we can get them off that phone and into more active
And that was identified
environments.
as something the youth want as well. And so I think there is a need, and we have some figuring out about how to make that happen in ways that youth feel valued and respected and encouraged and engaged when they're, and supported in organizations where they're volunteering. And I think that's certainly something that is an action that we can work towards, for sure, is identifying some of those pieces.
And one last quick question. Mariners on Main, you had mentioned that were there more opportunities for youth leadership in the past? And have we lost that? And do we need to go back to that?
So Mariners on Main operates as a facility in terms of the pool and they're doing things like Teen Takeover to attempt to bring teens in and offer some programming. But if you look at some of the programming that was happening in the past within the context of the YMCA as a not-for-profit organization, they were really engaging youth in leadership and in career development, and they were feeding kids. They were a not-for-profit organization that, pardon?
No, it was more impactful than the recent business model.
Yeah, so they were really geared towards developing youth and youth skill sets, which is not necessarily the focus at this time of Mariners on Main. Not to say that we couldn't develop partnerships to find ways to do that, maybe creating a not-for-profit arm. We've engaged Mariners on Main successfully in terms of looking at, what are some more not-for-profit partnerships that we can put in place to increase collaboration, to support more of those kinds of activities. But we are short of a youth-serving organization in our community now that the Y is gone, whose focus was to do those things. So it has changed the landscape, it's changed the context, and the mission is different in terms of the expansion and operating the facility.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Thank you very much. Very, very informative presentation. And, it really got me thinking while you were presenting, and really focused quite a bit on the Mariner Center expansion. And I did attend, as well as many other councillors and our warden, attended the community-wide public engagement December 4th, last Monday, I think that is. And it was really, really good. But one of the questions that came up, and I think it was a really good question, it was from a member of the public, and they asked, well, what do you tell somebody that says, listen, I don't use the facility myself, right? And some people don't. Many people wouldn't necessarily. But, you know, there was a little discussion that took place after that. And, you know, what you've been saying's the critical piece. So while some may use it directly, it is a community public good. And just to let everybody know, we've talked about this before at the council table, that it is 25-cent dollars, right? So the three councils, it's been really, really good because Argyle, the town, and us, I mean, we've really come together on this and worked collaboratively. So I think it's, you know, it's a real feather in our cap, so to speak.
Absolutely.
You know, regionally.
Yes, for sure.
That's fantastic that the three councils have come together. But when I say 25-cent dollars, the three councils collectively are putting in $10 million. I think 16 million's coming from is coming from the feds, and another four from you know, from the province, and as many as, you know, fundraising's going well. I don't know what it's going to be, but several million from the community. People will donate, the Yarmouth community and the larger community, Nova Scotia community. So really, when you get an opportunity to do something like that and spend 25 cents of municipal ratepayers' dollars for every dollar, that's pretty good. And it's a fantastic project. And but, you know, so it's not only about going, to your point, it's not only about going and working out. There's that sense of belonging, friendship, collegiality. You know, lots of times if a kid goes, they'll talk to an adult and maybe get a little advice or chat about things, career. There are all those informal things that happen at those facilities too. And but definitely somebody brought up mental and physical health and well-being. And again, I think you mentioned the words cost offset. So that does offset some of the costs for our health care dollars that we spend provincially and federally. So I think that's fantastic. And sort of that's why we're investing and working with the other municipalities to make this happen. Having said that, one thing that I will say that maybe we should look at doing as a council, maybe next time around that we develop the strategic plan and look at our goals again, is maybe put a little bit more thought into that servicing youth and engaging youth. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know if we thought about that enough, so thank you for
And
coming in.
having that lens in terms of how you make some of those
Yeah,
decisions
yeah.
or who you engage.
Yeah, and
would make a big
It
difference.
wasn't done purposely, but I think we could look at that a little bit more next time around. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Trevor.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. During your presentation here, you mentioned about engaging youth at the schools, which you've done, which is great to see, and I've done that myself in the past with other programs, right? You also talked about small community halls, and you know, do you guys have any type of programs that you'd like to introduce?
Well, I think the answer to that is not clear. No, there isn't any particular program other than to know that youth have expressed that they would like more places to hang out and to socialize and to find a sense of belonging and to develop trusting relationships with safe and welcoming adults. I think part of our role within each of our communities is to identify youth who may use those spaces and then to engage them to help design, define, set up those spaces so that they can be spaces that they feel connected to. And so there isn't one program that does that in all communities. It really is dependent on the youth who are going to be using it. And so, no, there isn't one program. The program is getting together with the youth who would like to be engaged and who can find some use, and then working with them to help them bring to life their vision of what it could be.
Okay. Also, you listed a number of items on your presentation and whatnot. But have any of those youth, the presentation you made, have they come up with any ideas of yet? If not, how do you engage those youth to come up with ideas and say, we just don't, we like to have a place to go together, for what?
The for what is really for hanging out and connecting. And developmentally, we've actually robbed many youth and young children at very critical developmental ages, and as a result of our COVID restrictions, unfortunately, and they were necessary for different reasons, but they did have developmental implications. And you can talk to any school teacher, they will tell you very clearly that they're seeing those issues coming out in terms of anxiety and depression and behavioral issues, depending, substance use, increases in substance use and risky behaviors. All of those things are way up, and we know the way to reduce those things is for youth to have a place to feel welcome and to connect, and, you know, sometimes to get advice or to just have a listening ear. And that is what they're saying they're needing. And this document is full of some of those solutions, but there isn't one cookie cutter approach that will fix it for all youth. And so that's why we're engaging community at multiple levels to encourage folks to identify the pieces that they can contribute to. And so we are working with youth in terms of our youth health centers within schools. We're working with youth in community with organizations like Split Rock or Aiden's Place and Shift and Tri-County Women's Center and our Family Resource Centers to look at some of those particular programming needs. And of course, as Livinus mentioned, mental health is focused heavily on some of those pieces as well. So there are a lot of prongs playing into it, and there's a role for all of us to play.
Okay, I'm glad that you mentioned the different organizations that you've been dealing with. I was not familiar with all of those organizations you're dealing with. I could go on quite a few more, but I know other councillors would like to have a say too. Do you meet with our recreation department and discuss with them? I haven't heard the recreation department mentioned.
Yep, absolutely. They're at all levels of this, and we've been working with Yarmouth Rec and Argyle Rec, as well as Communities, Culture, Tourism, and Heritage at several levels.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about Mariners on Main. Do you have any dialogue with Mariners on Main on how to improve?
Yep, we've been
their-
engaging with Mariners on Main. We've had several meetings in terms of...
Are they receptive to this?
They are receptive, and they're very keen to help make improvements and to look at, you know, how things are delivered. They do obviously have limitations because they're not a not-for-profit organization like the YMCA, so they're not going to be able to fulfill that mandate, but they still play a role. And so working with the board and working with the staff and the facility to increase the availability and opportunities for youth.
Well, again, I'll mention Mariners on Main, but I believe I think Councillor Cunningham had mentioned about 25 cents on the dollar sort of thing on different, I think it's the same thing with Mariners on Main. If there's somebody who really can't afford to be there, there's a
Yep.
way to make it happen. So to try to compare Mariners on Main with the past YMCA is not quite fair, I don't believe.
No, it isn't.
So I think there's an opportunity at Mariners on Main to bring a lot of activities that the YMCA was doing. And we did fund the YMCA a lot of money. So it was time for a change, and I think it's a good change. I think it's a chance. And if you guys have problems with Mariners on Main, because all three councils are partners in both facility, that we can have some say into it.
Yes, and they've been very receptive in
Well,
terms of
there you go.
engaging, and it's been good in that
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah.
And the identification of a youth-serving organization is a bit of a separate conversation as well, but they interplay in terms of where are our facilities and where are youth gathering, and certainly looking at the redesign in terms of creating youth-friendly spaces. And so it's gone in a number of directions, and they're actively engaged with us on those pieces.
Well, you know, from
Just wanted to add something.
your presentation until some of the questions that have been asked, I think you have elaborated on a lot more collaboration with other groups and whatnot, which is good to hear, and you know, just not making a presentation. I know what you guys do, but you know, you're just not making a presentation just to be heard. You're making a presentation that, you know, we involved a lot of different organizations. We involved a number of youth, but Councilman Verga mentioned, how do you get those youth off of their cell phones, their video games, and their violent video games? Not the old Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd stuff, but these are violent ones, you know, so.
I just, Councilor Lorry, I just wanted to add that in trying to get youths off their cell phones, we also need some parental push. On that day, for example, we had 50 youths and over 75 adults. Mayor Pamod was there herself just to tell you how many adults in the community are concerned about our youth. So we also need parents to do their own part of it. And talking about Mariners on Main, I'm happy to share some partnerships that happen between Mariners on Main. For example, Ridge, they do offer services for newcomers. They can give subsidized rates to newcomer youth who want to access Mariners on Main. You pay as you use. So it has some other partnerships with community organizations for youth to access the facility as well.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you. In my past, I've worked with a lot of youth, but only in the hockey program. So I've seen young kids, young youth that couldn't afford to play, and I made it so they could play. So you know, and I think that's very important. So thank you for your presentation.
It's critical, and on that note, there are 40% of our youth who are saying they can't engage, and they want to, and so
Yeah.
looking at solutions for sure.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I guess my next question is, you know, we're receiving this report, and it's a wonderful, one of the most engaging reports I've ever had handed to me. And it's not hard to really get involved in supporting youth. So my question is, can you tell me a little bit more about what is the next step for the people that created this? Is there an ongoing organization that's going to continue that work? Who funds that work? And how we as a municipality become engaged in what you would expect from us. I really like Councillor Cunningham's remarks about adding it to the next strategic plan. I think there could be some pillars that we could work on, but we need to know what that would be.
Right, and so that's absolutely a critical place where council, I think, could act. The day initially was funded in partnership with Communities, Culture, Tourism, Heritage, Yarmouth Hospital Foundation, TCRCE, the Tri-County Regional Center for Education, and there were some community donations that allowed us to put the day together. The folks who came together we created this in basically 3 months and made it happen. And so some of the partners that I've mentioned were the folks at the table who made it possible. And many of those organizations and individuals have agreed to continue to sit on what we're creating as a youth table. Doesn't have a name yet. We're in the process of developing the vision, mission, purpose, goals, and defining what the work will be. But the intent really is to action the content of this report in terms of the collective impact pieces, and so the coming together, and then to support youth engagement on an ongoing and continued level. And so we're hoping to help councils and communities and schools and different services to be able to engage with youth more effectively and to take down some of those barriers so that can happen. But really to improve on the collaborative and the communication and to look at that youth serving organization and it's being defined, but those are some of the high level pieces that the youth table is looking to do. And once it's the smaller group is still meeting to fine tune the building of it, but then there will be an invite to the broader community for those who have an interest in meeting the needs of youth to come sit on the youth table as well. And then there is an intention of expanding within the Tri-County region, because the data and the issues are not really different. And so providing that support through to Yarmouth, across Yarmouth, Digby, and Shelburne, because many of our organizations cover those 3 counties.
Great. And just follow up, like you mentioned Yarmouth Recreation, and, you know, there's a lot of questions right now for recreation about where we're headed. We have the recreation branch, we have Mariners on Main, and how we make all that work together. They were just doing a strategic plan. I don't know if you engaged in that process at all, but it's not completed, but you definitely should have, well,
Yeah, I don't think.
hand them this, really.
We haven't directly engaged in it, but certainly
Conversation
we're
with
open
Frank
to
would be
making that happen.
worth having. I'm not sure where that is. I feel like it's tabled at the moment, but at some point, they're going to finish that, and you should really have been engaged or
Yes.
consulted on that. Yeah, for me, you know, there's only so many things we can do around this table, but one of them is, you know, supporting financially and advocating for change and things like that. So it's really important to us. You know, maybe you guys give us some direction, because you're clearly in the know about what's going on, about where we can do those things. How do we know what community organizations to support? Like, how do you know what's right and where to put your money, or put taxpayers' money that does the most bang for the buck?
There's no one answer to that. I think I think,
That's how I feel too, just so you know.
and it's keeping a broad sense, I think, of, you know, making sure that all folks have a place to connect and belong. And I play hockey and I connect and belong there, and my kids swim and they connect and belong there, but not everybody does those things. Some like the arts, and some want to do other kinds of different things. Some want to try, we saw lots of youth who wanted to try different sports but didn't want to be engaged in you know, competitive kinds of things. And so putting our money where we can create that sense of community and have youth feel like they're valued and engaged and that they belong is the right place to put our money. And when we do that, they will thrive. The research very clearly shows that they will thrive, but it isn't always an easy task.
Just one final comment. I was really excited about, you know, what you were talking about and changes you could get. And I kind of Googled municipal youth council, and then you kind of crushed it by saying they wouldn't want to do this. But
They do want to do it, they just may not come to this format.
yeah, that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
then it would switch to how could we engage them? But
Right.
you know,
And it's changing that thought process.
there's definitely a role here for us. So thank you.
Just to comment, Councillor Nick, I think our major concern has been trying to engage youths not at school. We've actually reached out to youth serving organizations, reached out to Shifts, Paramba, like so many of them, but we've had that push, but like non-participation of youths not at school. This day was heavily attended by schools, youths at schools, but we still keep working. We're involving the outreach workers at Shift and other organizations to be part of the team so that we don't, you know, leave out youths who are not at school. So it has to be a collective action.
Amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. One of the things in here that I've seen as your priority themes is more hands-on learning experiences. I think that's something that's gone by the wayside. Councillor Durkee had mentioned cell phones and parenting, but there's more than that. The hands-on thing, I think that's something that's gone far away, unfortunately, due to these things. We got to find ways to engage kids without using this. It might be okay to Google how to, a few things.
And there's been some really great examples in the Tri-County of making that happen. At SMBA, they have a forestry program, which has kept a number of kids in school, and they've done some amazing things with engaging kids in forestry. And so that collective collaboration between our communities and education and youth, and sometimes vulnerable youth, to get those hands-on working opportunities is, there's a big need to make that happen.
Absolutely. So, thank you very much, you guys, for your presentation.
Thank you
Council's
very much,
engaged.
appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks.
Councillor Durkee?
Through you to our CAO, could you please contact Mike? My tablet won't turn on, that's why I'm using my phone to follow the agenda, please and thank you. Oh,
I can give you my spare if you really need it.
well, I've got the agenda on my phone, so until such time.
All right, moving on, item 5.2, Mr. Ron Cox.
Can you hear me okay? Yes, my name is Ron Cox. I live in Dayton. And first, I'd like to thank you for hearing my presentation. It's going to be on the importance of you people as councillors and how hopefully you can better work with the citizens of the municipality of Yarmouth who would like to work cooperatively with you. Some of you may have noticed this as I was walking to the mic. I know it's kind of small, you're looking at it from a distance, but it's a pyramid. And the reason I brought it in is that it's kind of a model or a picture of the way government works in our country. And usually I would the top we think of as the most important. I would disagree a bit with that, but we think of the top, the federal government, the Prime Minister and so on. Below that, you have your premiers, the provinces, and at the bottom, you have local government, which is you folks, and all the citizens that vote for all this above and supply the money that drives it. So that's why I brought that along, just to show you that. And I would argue that the most important level in all this is the bottom, the local government, you folks, and the people. And the reason I say that is that most of us never get to talk to the Prime Minister or never get to talk to the premiers of the province, but we do get to meet you folks. Most people in the municipality of Yarmouth know at least one councillor, and they recognize them. When they see them in town, they can speak to them and so on. So we have kind of a special relationship, the two of us. And it's also the level of government that we interact with most of the time. Now, there's a problem though. I've been attending council meetings for well over a year, and I wasn't used to doing that, so I got some surprises. And the biggest surprise I got was when I found out that citizens of the municipality of Yarmouth cannot ask questions or make a comment at a formal meeting like this one. And that was really a shock. I wasn't prepared for that. And I'd always been brought up to hear, about the democracy that we lived in and all the history we learned in school about all this. And then to see that happen, and I just touched on history. I've got to throw this in. I don't want to make this a history lesson, but this really surprised me when I was doing research for this presentation. I found out that this year, 2023, is an important anniversary for this province in Nova Scotia. It's the 175th anniversary of responsible government. And we, Nova Scotians, were the first ones in the British Empire to get that as a colony. We were world leaders back in the early 1800s, 175 years ago. So it's the anniversary of that. And yet, in this year, mid-December 2023, at least in this municipality, our citizens cannot ask a question formally or make a comment. Now, it is true that they can ask you guys, they can send you an email, private email, make a private phone call, send a private letter, or talk to you out on the street. But in a formal setting like this, where things can be asked in a public forum and recorded in minutes, we can't do it. That has to change. In my research, I found out that in the municipality next to us, they can do those things. So apparently this is not a law thing. It's not like against the law to allow this. In the municipality of Lunenburg, for example, at the beginning of each meeting, they allow their citizens 20 minutes. Each citizen who asks a question or makes a comment gets 3 minutes to do that if they need it, and they can fill up to 20 minutes. So you could have between 6 and 7 citizens asking a question. So this obviously is not a matter of law. It's just a personal thing, I guess. I checked with Robert's Rules of Orders. There's nothing in there that says that document is all about facilitating better meetings to make them more productive and to do away with any hindrances. So there's no problem there. One of the things I've heard that sometimes counselors are concerned that if questions are asked at a meeting, that somehow they would have to have the answer right on the tip of their tongue. And that's not the intent here at all, okay? So what I'm suggesting is that citizens be allowed to ask questions. Obviously, there's no way a counselor could be prepared for all the possible things that could be asked by citizens. So, of course, if the answer requires weeks or even a month of, checking or finding out an information or a number or whatever, that's fine. But what I'm asking for is the ability for citizens to simply ask a question. Remember, you folks, and I mean this in a respectful way, are public servants. And as public servants, that makes us, the voters, the citizens, your employers, really. So you're the employee, we're the employer, and we pay the bill. I've heard a little earlier this afternoon, some pretty big numbers thrown around. And something we have to remember is when the federal government spends money, and the provincial government spends money, and local government spends money, they haven't got a cent to spend. They have to take it from the people. And these are the same people that right now in the present state are not allowed to even ask a question or express a comment. That has got to change. And so I want to keep this brief, to the point. So in conclusion, I thought about this and I thought, now how hard can this be? Yes, we can delay, we can set up committees, we can kick the can down the road, and we can say, well, maybe in the new year, and so on and so on, and nothing gets done. I'm thinking, how complicated is this? And in my simple way of looking at it, it doesn't seem very complicated. What it would require is one of you folks to make a motion. Something like, going forward, I would suggest that we allow 15 minutes at the beginning of each meeting for questions or comments from the citizens. That would require a seconder. So now we've used up how much time? Probably a minute? Then we'd have to have a discussion and a vote. The discussion is pretty simple because we've had hundreds of years of discussion on this topic. Revolutions have been fought over this. What they call, what did the Americans call this? Taxation without representation. I mean, that's, people like to be able to represent or have their views out from time to time. Yes, we do. We do have elections every 4 years, but there's got to be something in between 4 years. And so all the discussions have been done over and over, and it always comes down to the same end result, that people have got to be allowed, unless you're living in a dictatorship, everybody would agree that people have got to be allowed to ask a question and express an opinion from time to time. That's all I'm asking for. And I would just ask you to consider this. It wouldn't take very long. It would be a great Christmas gift to the people of the Yarmouth municipality before the end of the year. And I'll leave it at that, and I would definitely appreciate or entertain any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Excellent presentation, Mr. Cox.
Yes, sir.
And I think there was a little thing called the Boston Tea Party, wasn't there? That came
I
out
think
of
so,
that?
yes.
If I remember my history, not Canadian history, but American history. And the Joe Howe 175th anniversary is a really important one, and notes taken. Having said that, I agree with a number of things you've said. And really, if you go back to Robert's Rules, which you obviously have, I think you're correct in saying there's nothing that prohibits somebody speaking, but that's the chair's discretion. That's what we've always done. So this presentation, I read the presentation previously and caused me to think a little bit, because, you do things kind of repetitively. That can happen as well over a period of time. And so it is the chair's discretion whether to answer, questions. And again, one of the things nothing more strict than maybe necessary is a good rule of thumb. Having said that, we don't, as you also mentioned in your presentation, we don't typically make a motion right after, it's like answering a question right after a presentation. So, I'm kind of betwixt and between on that. I see both sides of that argument. Having said that, I think what I maybe recommend is that our chair, I think perhaps he's thought about this a little bit as well, maybe over the next little bit, because ultimately the chair rules on who speaks, who doesn't, including council. And I think, given what you've told us, we don't have any bylaws to govern this, which is correct. There's no law, there's no set of bylaws in the municipality that governs this, but we do have Robert's rules, which we go by when there's not anything else to state a way forward. So given all that, what I'd like to do, and again, maybe a little, I understand your sense of urgency, but given that we don't necessarily typically, make a motion, but maybe at the January meeting, our warden could bring back his thoughts, because ultimately, it's partly a function of the individual overseer of the meeting, which is the warden in this instance, and how they'd like to work, and as a start, maybe toward a motion, and maybe it could just be, maybe there's not a motion of council necessary at all. Maybe it could be as simple as that the warden brings us something, a series of practices or guidelines that that they're willing to entertain, and we may be able to go from that. But again, I think that's maybe something the warden could work with, and of course he's got staff and can call us at any individual councils that members at any time for some advice, including the deputy warden. So
I've looked at
those are
this
my comments.
across Canada, across the province, and there are a lot of places that allow this, so there must be, it's possible.
I'll speak to that after everyone else speaks. Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Mr. Cox, for your presentation. It was interesting, and I do agree with you that we are elected by the people, so we should have an opportunity to listen to what the people have to say. And again, I'm going to reference back to what Councillor Cunningham had mentioned, that we usually do not make a motion during this committee of the whole meeting. However, I do agree that we should have a good discussion on it and bring it up again at our, I know you wanted it for a Christmas present, but I don't think it's possible right now to have for a Christmas present, but I will guarantee you that we will bring it up again in January, and then we will definitely have some type of motion for or against. So, okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ron, for continuing to advocate for our community. I've said since day one, I don't always agree, and we've had really good conversations, and you've been respectful throughout them. And I think this is one of those things. And I think, you've actually changed my mindset on a couple things. I do believe the pyramid is upside down. I do. I think that you have provided insight and good thoughts for us as your elected officials. So, part of that not making a motion during a presentation is just out of respect to the other 6 councillors and not putting them on the spot to make a decision. But I'm with the other 2 that we will ask to have that discussion in the January meeting. Again, thank you. Thank you for continuing to advocate for our residents.
Thank you, Ron, for making that presentation. This one's very close to what Greg had asked me Mr. Greg Muse had asked me in a letter, and I said that I would be doing a little bit of my own personal research. Actually, I went up to the Municipality District of Clare's council meeting during one of their, there was actually no one there to speak other than myself, and a resident from the municipality was there as well. It's funny, Councillor Nick Hilton had mentioned something about that little pyramid you have. I totally agree. Everything from my understanding and the way it should be, from my beliefs, everything comes from the ground up, from the people up. As has been mentioned here, typically motions are not made during presentations, and the deputy warden had mentioned that it'd be up to me in regards to having this added to on the agenda. But what I've heard here through the discussion through your presentation is council would like to discuss this at a committee of the whole meeting. Christmas presents sometimes come late, as we all know, as someone had mentioned. All it would take is for me to send an email to council and staff saying this is going to be on our January council committee of the whole agenda, and I can, from what I've heard here, there is an appetite for council to speak about that. Our council also runs on a council procedural policy. As you know, it was modified on October the 25th, 2023. We can open up any of our policies at any time. Whether I'm the chair or any chair committee, this is what they usually follow, and there's good reason for that. It gives the chair, number one, ground rules on which he can operate something like that. And what you're asking is obviously new, and would, if council decides to move forward with this, it would be new to the Municipality District of Yarmouth. I have a finite time as a chair here. This procedure would also dictate what future chairs of any councils or committees would do. So in that regard, I can certainly send out an email to staff to have this on our next January committee of the whole meeting, which would, I don't know the date right off the top of my head. I am willing to do that, and I will commit to that here.
Thank you.
There's some more, I do believe. Deputy Warden?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think it's about, more than just putting on the committee of the whole meeting for January. There is a certain urgency to this, and our procedure to this point has been that really it's at the discretion of the chair to this point, following Robert's rules. And I mean, there's a clear impetus for change, I think. And what I suggested, and again, you can do this or not, I'm just the deputy warden, but I think that there should be a document on that agenda that we can discuss, because if we just say it's on the agenda, we're right back where we started, essentially, like it's right now. So I think, and you've already indicated you've done some research, you've been to Clare, and obviously there are some other practices, so you're kind of ahead of the curve a little bit in that sense. So what I'd suggest is that, you know, you can email this out to us, but I would suggest that a draft from which to begin discussion would be prepared, and that we'd be prepared to discuss that at the committee of the whole meeting on January 1st. Otherwise, we've got it on the agenda and there's nothing to discuss. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I hear you there, Deputy Warden. I have done some research. Actually, I have a couple emails. I just got to confirm with the emails that, to the people that I sent the emails to, that I can put it on our agenda. One of them was the Municipality of Clare, Yvon LeBlanc, and Stéphane Cyr, the CEO there, on what their ground rules were. So I do have some preamble that I can do. So absolutely, don't disagree with that at all. Any more? Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you.
Item number 6, old business, 6.1. The SCCF PACE application. We have with us, I do believe, Julian Boyle and Brenda Legrandier. Your microphone's already on, so as soon as you're ready, you can have the floor.
Thank you. Something has popped up on our presentation. Mike was here. Mike was just here. He'll be back.
There it goes.
Gone.
So I think just those 2 rows.
Yeah.
Do the trick.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much for having us today. My name is Brenda Legrander, and I have been here a few times before, but in a different capacity. So as of May of this year, I took on a new role with the Western Wren as a program coordinator. Part of my job description included some files that were previously held by a colleague of mine, Evan Nemeth. Evan worked extensively on what we called an energy file for several years. And that's the project, I guess, that I'm here to talk to you about today. In 2019, the Western Wren had a study commissioned to look at the energy transmission in our end of the province. And what that study showed us was that we had some of the oldest and most taxed energy transmission lines in the province. And for the Western Wren, of course, the importance of that was, or the importance was that it restricted the amount of investment that could be made in this region when it came to the business community. So we had several other studies done to look at what could be done to help alleviate that problem and open up potentially some space on those lines. When I took over the role in May, we had just had a study released in, I think it was March. And part of that study had multiple recommendations that dealt with working with the residential community to help them reduce their energy consumption by taking advantage of energy efficiencies. Like I said, we don't usually work with the residential household market, but it was a way for us to have an impact and free up space on those energy transmission lines. There were several recommendations in there, and we started working on 2 of them right away. One was to establish a position in the region that was named an energy concierge. This energy concierge position was a person who was going to help resident homeowners navigate the existing programs that were already in place, that were already out there, that would help a resident access a rebate if you got a heat pump, or a solar panel program, for any of the existing programs that were out there. The other recommendation was a regional PACE program, and I know that the municipality is already a regional PACE provider. So, and we did have 3 of our 7 municipalities that were already delivering the PACE program. So, like I said, I started with the energy concierge portion of that recommendation and let Google do the talking. And when I went looking to see what I could find out about, more about that position, I actually realized that there were energy concierges in the province of Nova Scotia, and they were working for Switch PACE, which Julian will explain a bit more. So essentially, when we did more investigation, we talked to municipalities and areas such as Bridgewater, who has worked extensively in the energy sector, and understood really quickly that a single person trying to navigate all of the different programs that are out there for one organization was just going to be overwhelming, and we were potentially going to burn them out if we managed to find the right person to begin with. The other was, when we looked at what Switch PACE CIC offered, they offered much more than just the energy concierge position. They offered an ability to both help the resident navigate those existing programs, but also help them, if they wanted to, continue onwards to potentially get a loan to complete the projects that they needed done. It started a conversation between Julian and I for several months, And what always happens when you're having a great conversation, a funding opportunity came along. So the funding opportunity was through the NSFM, through the Sustainable Communities Challenge. And what happened there is we were able to come together, get some information out to our municipal CAOs about the possibility of putting in a joint application. So a joint application was submitted to that fund, which included 4 municipalities, of which the municipality of Yarmouth is included, and is actually the lead municipality on that, because the Western Rent was not an eligible applicant. It has to be a municipality that applies for that fund. So I have alluded to him, but and the company, but I'm happy to introduce Julian Boyle, who's here today. He's going to tell you a bit about himself, a bit about what they offer, and as well as the process of the work that we've done to get to the application process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess just for the record, Julian Boyle, president of SwitchPace. We're an organization based in Halifax. I've got about I guess, hopefully this goes forward. Oh, no. Yeah, the arrow down or up or, yeah. Well, he's mousing. I'll just continue talking. So I have about a 15-minute presentation here, really just to kind of summarize a couple of months of work and really some anticipatory stuff for the spring of 2024. Lots of exciting things. We've been working with your staff here as well and other municipalities in the region. But I think this is all really just about you folks and trying to answer any questions you have about PACE and have some at least familiarity with maybe the ambition of a regional program. Oh, yay. So I think just to kind of start with the classic kind of why would you be interested in this? And I'm going to start with kind of one of the fuzzier things that we see in other programs that we've got experience with in the Maritimes. And the first one really is engaging and empowering the community. There's a lot of opportunity for residents to save money, but one of the really underlying kind of themes of this programming is about reducing carbon and GHGs. And we're actually a community interest corporation, and that's our mandate, is to accelerate carbon reductions. And we see this very much when we empower residents and give them the tools, they will take up the challenge and be part of this global fight against climate change. So that's a really exciting outcome that we had hoped to kind of achieve in a program here. I think there's all kinds of different perspectives on programming that reduces energy consumption. Obviously the Western Region Economic Network here is very, very interested in the local economic impacts. We are in the middle of a green jobs boom. We see this in programming throughout Nova Scotia, throughout Atlantic Canada. There's significant activity and opportunity created for local businesses. That's the great thing about energy efficiency. It really can't be imported from even Halifax. It has to be purchased and bought here in the region. And so we work very locally to really work with the local contractors to build capacity and to build awareness really in the opportunities in the energy transition that we're going through for the next 10 to 20 years. So it's really exciting to kind of see that. We run a program in Charlottetown. We've ran it for about 2.5 years. We have 80 different contractors involved in the programming. Now, they're a little bit bigger community than the District of Yarmouth here, but even if we had 20 or 30 contractors here, this is going to reach out and impact and create opportunities here locally. Certainly the focus we always talk about is helping residents today's cost of energy continues to escalate. You know, we're going to see another Nova Scotia Power rate increase baked in next spring, and probably another one and another one. Global events are certainly impacting the cost of fossil fuels. There is a lot of programs out there to help residents, though, too. And, you know, they're struggling to kind of figure out the navigation of that and how do we do that. They know that they've got opportunities to reduce their energy costs and put money back in their pocket. And that's kind of one of the primary conversations we really have with homeowners. In this district, you know, we've done, oops, don't do that to me. I'll turn that over to you maybe, Brenda. There's some energy mapping that's being done here in the district from basically from Clare to Barrington, the five or six municipalities within this programming envelope. This particular area of Nova Scotia experiences a lot of energy poverty. It's very high percentage of their incomes are spent on heating and electrifying their homes. And so it's one of the policy and program design outcomes we have is to reach these members in the community, whether they're seniors, low-income people, people maybe without access to the internet. We have lots of barriers and challenges that we have to address to help people. They're struggling with heating their homes, and so it's a really important why. And you know, with hopefully the Sustainable Communities Challenge funding, we're going to be able to do a lot of outreach and support to help those demographics in your community. Next slide, Brenda. So just a little bit about us for hopefully just 30 seconds or less. We're a small but mighty team in Halifax, so we have 13 staff that basically we design, administrate, and finance and execute PACE programming. This is all we do. We are the originators of PACE in Nova Scotia. I was a city staffer with the City of Halifax for about 15 years and helped design and launch the Halifax Solar City program, which was the first PACE program in Canada in 2010. It's been replicated all across Canada in the last 4 or 5 years, which is really exciting to see. And we're working in communities, in particular here in the Maritimes. So we run 7 programs right now in PEI and Nova Scotia, primarily, like Colchester County, Pictou County, Wolfville, not Kentful yet, West Hants. So communities that you would be familiar with and that have somewhat the same sort of geographic demographics, you know, partly rural communities, some kind of localized neighborhoods and things like that. So we have a lot of experience running programs. We've helped over 1,000 homeowners in the last year access funding and put real dollar savings into their pockets. We also help municipalities with, you know, obviously any funding that you folks can get really reduces the cost and risk to the municipality and the cost to the community as well. So, you know, we've helped a whole bunch of municipalities access lots of federal and provincial funding. We've been recognized by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We won their national award last year for the switch programs in PEI and Wolfville, so it's exciting. So enough said about us. This kind of gives you just a quick snapshot. I've already talked about some of this, but I'm going to highlight just that 210 jobs. We did an economic impact study of the programming in PEI and Stratford. We do both those communities together. In the last 2 years of programming, we've created over 210 jobs. So this is really exciting. The scale of what we're achieving in these communities and the impact is, it's really great. And so next slide, Brenda. So just to kind of summarize, what do we do really? We really try and do a turnkey approach on an end-to-end from a programming perspective. We've talked a lot about the front end and engagement with the community here, but we provide a lot of back office support too. So we do billing and collection on behalf of municipalities and really trying to lower the administrative hurdle and barrier for smaller municipalities, because these programs are complex and so we do kind of like an end-to-end turnkey support for municipalities, which we think speeds up deployment, increases scale, and really can kind of create opportunities, and we see opportunities being created with municipal partners. So next slide. So what to kind of expect? I can't remember what the next slide is. I think we've got 2 slides here that kind of just show some case studies of what typically we see as far as economics and projects for homeowners. About 30% of the projects that the program supports and finances is solar. Solar is one of those technologies that keeps getting better and better. I mean, I've seen, cost reductions of over 90% in the last 12 years. So for approximately a $30,000 investment, they will save about $90,000 over the lifespan of a solar system. So pretty good returns. I think kind of what we're trying to highlight here, though, a couple of things here is one, how do we operate a business? Well, we charge a one-time 5% administration fee to homeowners. So that's $1,300. But we also really designed the programming and the financing so it's no money up front for homeowners, and that the savings will always be the same or greater than the payments. And so after the system's paid off, they get to keep all of the savings. So solar keeps getting better and better. There's also lots of incentives out there for homeowners, like there's a $5,000 federal incentive currently to reduce their costs. But we're seeing the solar industry flourishing really in the province kind of from an end to end. What we do, though, is really our team of energy concierges has helped navigate homeowners to find good contractors, to be there to answer questions, and we're really kind of like I would call it the unbiased coach. We can, it might not be suitable for everybody, and we'll kind of steer them to better opportunities maybe that they have. The Energy Concierge coaching service is free, so if people can get right to the end point and decide, no, we're not going to go ahead, we're moving to Florida because better solar there. But I think regardless of where homeowners are at in their kind of energy efficiency journey, we're kind of here to help them. And so, next slide. A lot of talk about heat pumps lately. I'll ask in the room, who's still on oil in this room? Who's using oil? Okay. You need to get a heat pump. There is fantastic incentives to really help homeowners get off of oil. It's got about a 1.5-year payback these days. So despite higher electricity costs, there's fantastic incentives, but again, it's the typical challenge is homeowners have to come up with the upfront money, they have to navigate through these complex rebate processes. There's all kinds of hiccups and barriers homeowners experience, and we're really here to kind of help reduce that friction and really help homeowners. And so we see about 40% of the projects that we do are heat pumps. We also do doors and windows, EV chargers, batteries, anything that basically reduces carbon. And so it's kind of an exciting time to help homeowners. Next slide. So this is the last kind of just what's going on in some of our other programs. The thing here I'd like to highlight, though, is we're seeing participation rates where we're retrofitting somewhere between 2% and 5% of the housing stock annually in every community. So I think in the District of Yarmouth here, we would be looking at about 80 to 100 homes being retrofitted in about a 1.5-year kind of period. But when we do mapping of participation, it's kind of like the same in Colchester and Wolfville, and these communities have been running for about 4 or 5 months. So it's really exciting when we engage with the community. 30% of the homeowners do multiple projects, so they're obviously happy enough with the first project, they want to do another project. But this is really exciting to kind of create this inertia, a momentum, and of really helping homeowners in municipalities. So just wrapping up here, what's the next steps? Brenda kind of talked about this, a funding application. A funding application is always good to kickstart a programming. So that was submitted a couple of weeks ago. We'd hope to hear back by April. So we're looking at targeting April launch of a program here. Lots of, I got to thank your CAO here. She put in lots of effort to really get that over the finish line. It was kind of a joint effort, you could imagine, between multiple municipalities. It's you know, takes some doing. But I think, you know, what we're seeing, and we work with other municipalities that do this in a regional approach, it really provides a lot of program oversight, as well as really lowering it for the risk for the municipality, but some economies of scale here really in marketing, community engagement, industry engagement. So we're kind of excited to kind of really work closely with the REN, you folks and other municipalities here to really get this program going at full speed in summer of 2024. Geez, it's like a timer. I guess just with that, I think I maybe just turn it over and answer any questions you have. And so, yeah.
I have one quick one in regards to heat pumps. Can your home insurance, can you have a heat pump using it as a primary heat source, and will your home insurance insure your home?
Yes, that's a pretty typical question we get. We see people fully displacing oil with heat pump technology. Usually there's some kind of supplemental backup electric heaters that qualify for that secondary source for insurance purposes.
I've heard many comments over the years that homeowners are told that they cannot have a heat pump as a primary heat source because they need a backup.
So, lots of myths in the energy industry. We see the same thing when solar systems are, the insurance company won't insure that. We've got a list of insurance brokers and companies that kind of are familiar with the technology. We really advise homeowners, if you're having some difficulty with your insurance provider, talk to an alternative that's more familiar. So it's very common now that we see people basically displacing their oil systems with heat pumps. Every home is a little bit different, whether it's a centrally ducted system or a baseboard radiator system, but it's typically not a barrier from getting an insurance provider to, it's kind of,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that because someone, I can't remember who I was talking to, and I mentioned to them, I said that they had oil heat, and oil heat is usually run by a blower. I said, well, it doesn't make sense that the insurance company wouldn't insure your home because you have a heat pump, because if the power went out, your oil burner wouldn't work either. So, to me,
Yeah.
it's not that I'm knocking heat pumps, it's just, this is something that you hear all the time, or at least that I hear on the street. Councillor Lorne Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks for the presentation. One thing I did hear that was I found very helpful is that help people fill out applications. I've helped seniors fill out applications that are just so freaking confusing, and so that would be great if that's there, right? And what was I? Oh yeah, your 210 jobs that you say that you've created, are they new jobs or are they job replacement from like a person has left one career to step into this?
these would be new jobs. I mean, sometimes people do move into a more stable field like this where there's more activity. So we see the type of jobs, though, are a wide spectrum really of opportunity. We talked about heat pump and solar, which are quite technical installation jobs, but there's certainly lots of jobs in project coordination, doing home energy assessment work. We see the whole spectrum of kind of people that are really provided opportunity. And I mean, we had hoped actually in this program, where we didn't mention it here because I think this community isn't too Acadian, but one of the supports here is going to be to devise some language, and we're going to have a French-speaking concierge to basically support some of the parts of the community here in southwest Nova Scotia that typically can't access these programs because they're suffering from that kind of challenge. But to that rebate question, that is a really big, important thing, is like we deal with programming day in, day out with homeowners with all kinds of iterations you can imagine, different circumstances. These programs come and go about every 6 or 7 months. We're very familiar with the programs. It's complicated for us. And so, you know, our team really keeps on top of that to kind of help ensure that homeowners are kind of making the right steps at the right time. Because there's a lot of money on the table with these incentive programs, but there's a lot of stickiness to them. And so really helping ensure homeowners are navigated through that sort of seamlessly and easily is something our team really focuses on.
Another concern I have is, or question I have is the payback. You know, it sounds pretty reasonable and whatnot, but I wonder how many low-income families can actually afford to pay back this type of money.
Well, typically the loans are amortized over 10 years. If you were looking at a heat pump project with a 1.5-year payback after the rebates have been applied, their savings are going to far exceed their payments. So, I mean, people still have to heat their home, still have to provide electricity in their home. So what we're doing is really fixing that constantly variable cost that they have a hard time struggling to budget when increases coming. So if, you know, once energy efficiency is implemented, that block is done. It's, you know, you're not suffering from any volatility. So like there's a lot of benefits in that from an economic perspective. We didn't talk about it, but there's also a lot of health benefits too from people improving the condition of their home. Like
I'm not arguing that. I'm just
insulating.
wondering how people are going to pay this back on a low income.
Yeah, so we design that programming to make it as painless as possible. If they are income qualified, there's a lot of free equipment that they can get installed. There's usually limits on that.
That's an interesting point,
Yeah, so, you know, our team kind of coaches, you know, and has that conversation with homeowners to understand their circumstance, their income level, what kind of programs are a best fit for them. So, so it's not just, you know, here's one solution, you know, it has to be really custom tailored to that homeowner.
So when a homeowner is interested in doing an application, are they, I'm looking at the lower income, because once they see these numbers, they're going to say, ooh, geez, I can't afford this. Is there a way to say that if you qualify for assistance in paying this back, is that should be made available to the public to see?
Yeah.
Because what I see here, numbers, it's, you know, low income cannot afford it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the benefits of having some grant money from the Sustainable Communities Fund, that like the administration fee is going to be waived for low income. In other programs, we provide extra incentives to, you know, insulate more or go deeper on a retrofit that's paid for. So like there's all kinds of different ways to address that affordability question to low-income homeowners. I think I lost it on the last slide when the mouse sort of took over, but you know, one of the things we want to do here, I think, you know, through the REN, is create a local climate leadership council, really, that kind of sets the policy objectives, you know, within the budget constraints that you have, in particular for, you know, those program access
Yeah.
issues as well. So
Yeah.
we see about, we do a lot of data sort of collection within the programming.
Yeah.
About 20% of our homeowners, I would say, are somewhere between low income and medium income. And so
Yeah.
the thresholds for truly low income are very low, like 22,000 for a single person, 45,000 for two people. If you're just above that, you get no low income help at all. And so,
Yeah.
so we're kind of really trying to expand the bandwidth of there to kind of help people that are,
Fine line.
yeah.
Between, I mentioned the low-income families and whatnot, but that would also be addressed to seniors. Seniors who
Yep.
live on our great pensions that the federal government give us,
Yeah.
which is next to nothing. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Don't take no worry.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you both. It's interesting to see things move forward. Just very quick question. You know, you mentioned about oil, and I have oil, and it's awful. I'm spending a stinking fortune. But I also have heat pumps, and when you have older homes that are all cut up, heat pumps aren't very effective, quite frankly. So what I want to know from you is when you do like a solar system, do you end up putting in another heat source, like electric panels, electric systems, radiators, baseboards in your home and use that? Is that what happens? Because, sorry, I have no clue how that works and how that can benefit people.
So every home is different, and your home's probably different than your fellow deputy
totally.
warden there. Particularly with older homes, there's different challenges. What we recommend very strongly by default is a home energy assessment. If I don't know if you've had one of those yet or not, but somebody will come and do a very detailed analysis of your home. If, there's kind of like I saw in the last presentation, a pyramid, but there's a pyramid of energy efficiency investments too. And, insulating and air sealing would typically be the first thing before you think about fuel switching, before you think about renewable energy. So depending on what you've already done, what the layout of your home is, that home energy assessment assessor will provide a pretty detailed report with recommendations. Usually that's complemented very deeply with the help that we can give. So like, finding actual contractors in your area that do insulating or that are more familiar maybe with circumstances that you might have, right? So.
Okay, and is there money for that, to help with that? I mean, there's money obviously to help with solar system, with, putting solar panels on your home, but is there help for people who need their homes insulated or
Yes.
windows and et
Yep.
cetera, et cetera? Because we have a lot of big old homes in Yarmouth County, which I'm sure thanks to, I appreciate that Councillor Cushing brought up about low income, because we have a lot of seniors living in these gigantic homes, and it is not easy to maintain heat. So any source of grants or financial assistance for anybody is greatly appreciated.
The short answer is yes. Anything that reduces carbon and saves energy typically has some kind of incentive, like, it might be like $200 a window that you replace. I'll give that as an example. But you have to be navigated through that to understand reasonably what you can expect from an incentive and what the economics of your particular retrofit would look like. Ensuring that the contractor is installing qualifying equipment and, that the pre-approvals are being done. So like, there's lots of incentives to typically help offset the costs. Some are usually between 20 and 30% of a project. So, I think we highly encourage people to start with a home energy assessment, talk to your home energy assessor, but then call us as well too. And, between that, you can kind of start to see kind of where your low-hanging fruit are. Solar by default, everybody thinks about that, but there's probably other things that maybe you want to think about first before you embark on a solar journey.
Thank you. I think that's really important for the public to know that there are stages in order for that to be effective before they spend, the thousands of dollars or bore thousands of dollars for that system. What's going to be the most efficient? So thank you.
Deputy Warden.
Yes, thank you. Good presentation, and I know some folks that have upgraded to heat pumps, and it's been, there's a number of players, as you say, involved, but it takes a little doing, but it can be done. Having said that, yeah, I haven't gone forward with it, but it's been in the back of my mind, maybe this will give me the push I need to do something. But in the event, I guess my question's around, you have the energy assessment done, and just in terms of timing, so you're talking about the Wren getting having a concierge service. When might that happen to assist? So you get the that's kind of an A to Z type service. So you'd come to them, and it would look like them maybe calling for energy assessment, and then once they get the assessment, they'd move you through the rest of it. Is that the case? And when would that happen in the Western region?
So, fingers crossed, we're anticipating probably sometime towards the end of April.
Okay.
It takes usually a couple of months for these programs to ramp up. But there's a heavy focus really on engaging the community. We'll run homeowner information sessions to have them familiar about the programming, but also really underlying this is a lot of education too. And so sometimes we do specific sessions around solar or heat pumps, and so we have different levels of interest in that in communities. But it's kind of an underlying thread here of always, listening to the community, what are people are challenged with, and kind of how we can make it easy. And I kind of stress that really is our goal is to make this easy. And that's how we get to 3 to 5% of the housing stock per year doing deep energy retrofits, is making this easy. Lots of great technical questions here. It's not easy to do this, and so what we're really here to do is help reduce that friction, help homeowners, and give them the confidence that they're really going to have a successful outcome. We help people with all kinds of different challenges. I'll give an example. We launched a program in West Hants about a month ago. The very first homeowner, we launched on a Wednesday. First, she called up and said, my house experience was part of the flooding that happened this last summer. Because it was overland, her furnace was gone, and it wasn't covered under insurance. Can you help? And I said, yes, absolutely. And so we had an agreement signed with her the next day, had a contractor lined up to install the work on a Friday. So we fast-tracked a lot of things to help that homeowner. We can do the same thing with, home energy assessments can sometimes be tricky for people to get a company, but when we can aggregate and do programming on a regional scale, we think we can really help homeowners depending on that kind of friction that they're dealing with, and ensure that, they're not short-circuiting kind of like the process, that they're making sure that they still qualify and it's going to be the lowest cost, and that they're getting a fair price from a contractor, and all of the sort of good practices that come through the whole programming design. So.
Very good, thank you. And sounds like a reasonable plan to try to get energy costs down for folks in the region. So thanks, and look forward to, I guess, spring 2024. Thanks.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. There's a couple other questions I wanted to ask, but I forgot to ask them. Number one, solar panels. We have a lot of coastal homes. We have a lot of winter storms, very strong winds. How do they handle that, number one? And number two, the solar panels goes over an existing roof. One day, that existing roof is going to have to, the shingle is going to have to be replaced and whatnot, so there's a big cost of taking the solar panels off to fix the roof and put it back on. Tell me.
Well, great questions. Hopefully you don't have an old roof, But we typically try and recommend to homeowners, if you're in the last 5 years of a, 15 to 25-year roof, if, depends on quality of the roofing job you have. But if you're in the last 5 years of the life cycle of the roof, you really should think about replacing the roofing, at least the section that you're going to put.
So there's an extra cost.
Yeah, but the cost of the actual solar panel installation is about 10 or 15% of the overall cost of the system. So, it might cost a couple of $1,000s to remove the solar panels, replace your roof, get the solar contractor to come back. So it's not like an insurmountable challenge in the lifespan. We're seeing, solar systems are lasting 30+ years. The warranties for 20 years. I've got a solar system on my roof. It was really windy the other day, like 80 or 90 kilometer winds, which got me thinking about how normally I'm around the lawn the next day to see where the tiles are. So the solar panels can actually protect the roof too. So like they can extend the life of span of the roof. You don't have the sun beating down and heating expansion and
I
contraction.
understand that, yeah.
So like there's these other kind of hidden benefits to a solar system really, and on a good roof. As far as like wind loads and things like that, so I started the Halifax Solar City program in 2010. It's had financed almost 1,000 installations in the city. I haven't heard of one system like.
Yeah, I like say, for instance, I live right on the coast myself, sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it blows some hard at times that the corners of the house actually whistle.
Yeah.
So I wonder kind of, what's the wind rate, I forget what the proper word I'm looking for. That
Typically, you would start to get nervous when it's about 150 to 180 kilometers an hour, which is like basically a Category 1 hurricane. So when you get to that kind of wind speed, you're worried about your whole roof coming off, not just your solar panels. So there's a lot of experience with a lot of good contractors here installing, thousands of solar systems throughout Nova Scotia. And, I wouldn't, quite frankly, be worried about that, provided you have a good contractor.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I won't take any more of your time.
All right, everyone, any questions from staff? Thank you very much for
Well,
coming
thank
in.
you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again in the new year.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Item 6.2, request for decision, roof repair, the Port Maitland fog alarm building. You all have that in your package, Madam CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So council's been moving through the process required to prepare the Port Maitland fog alarm building for divestiture. Just by way of summary, a couple of things that have happened. So remediation of the interior of the building and some remediation of some paint product on the exterior of the building and the door has been done. Council's made a decision in terms of the Municipal Government Act on how they'd like to divest it. And so a big piece that's remaining is the roof. A condition assessment was done on the roof. And unfortunately, the condition of the roof is poor enough that it's not a small repairs and maintenance process to prepare the roof in order to secure the building envelope. And so council had given a budget of $5,000 to prepare the building envelope for divestiture, and the cost to repair the roof exceed the $5,000. $4,600 has already been spent to remediate the interior and those few exterior pieces I mentioned. And so the Director of Public Works pursued some options with local contractors on what can be done with the roof, recognizing that it's a marine structure and it's a marine environment, it's right on the coast. And so a request for decision was submitted to me by the Director of Public Works with a couple of options for repairing the roof. The recommendation is to install new OSB roof membrane and flashing to provide a proper roof repair that will provide a sound and secure roof for longevity and future divestiture options. And so that does come at a cost of $16,581 plus HST. And so it's being submitted to council today for a decision and direction on how you'd like to move forward. There are contingency monies in your operating budget that have not been spent. So there's money in the contingency fund to fund this if council so chooses.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that building almost daily, and it shocks me that the cost to do that roof repair is so expensive, like to replace the roof. However, that being said, I do understand location makes it much more challenging because of the weather. Did we get a number of different estimates for that?
So the type of procedure that's being used is the same procedure that was used at Cape Verschoe. It's my understanding there are only a couple of firms locally that can do it, and so they've both been engaged.
Thank you. I guess on that note then, when you divest a building, I would like to see that it's divested in good condition. So on that note, I am going to make the motion that we accept option 2, and certainly since the CIO supported that recommendation of the director, and that we choose to have the roof completely redone and the money to come from this year's budget.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Discussion on that motion? Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you to the CAO, Public Works have already spent money on exterior, interior with paint removal and stuff like this. So if we don't do the roof, we wasted money. And one of the costs for the roof is the roof structure itself has to be replaced, or just the lack of better words, the
So
shingle?
what's there now has to come off, and then there has to be new OSB applied, a new membrane, has to be sealed, new flashing.
Okay, yeah. All right, yeah, I think it's, I think it has to be done.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess my only real question is, we're looking to divest this to a community group that wants to do something with the site. In our agreement with them, I guess this is to the CAO, right? When we divest it, are we done with it? Like, it's no longer ours, or is it like a lease, $1 a year kind of thing? Like, what is the end goal? Is this our building to maintain, or is this maybe what the community group should be doing themselves?
So divestiture means that it's no longer an asset that's owned by the municipality. The terms and conditions under which a community group would take ownership are part of a contract negotiation that council will enter into when the time comes.
Okay. I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but would the intent be for the building to remain the same? Like the same structure? Like, without, I don't want to put a new roof on it and then modify it and take the roof off. Would the intent of the municipality be for that building to remain, for the structure to remain the same as a heritage property?
Council haven't given any direction that when the request for expressions of interest go out, it would include a requirement that the building maintain its current structure. I don't believe it's a registered heritage property, so it doesn't have that protection.
Is the roof leaking now?
Yes, badly.
Okay. I will say, I know that we have one group that their intent is to maintain that property, I believe, to the form that it is. And, I look at a $16,000 plus the $5,000 investment, very minimal when it comes to creating community public places or parkland of sorts. So I am in favor of spending the $16,000 to create a location in Port Maitland in our communities, which we've identified in our strategic plan as something that we want to do. So I think it's a minimal ask to create that type of location for our residents.
Any more questions? I do have one. And it's in regards to option one. And option one is repair the existing roof, whereby the roof could be torched to reactivate the tar and apply to roll roofing at the cost of $7,076.48 plus HST. So that does not include reflashing it. That just means basically what it says. You torch the roof and then you put another layer of asphalt shingles on it?
No, there's no new material applied, so you're torching the existing material on the roof, hoping that the tar readheres and you prevent the leaks.
Okay, that typically, usually got to go back a second, third, fourth time. Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. I want to apologize. There's one thing that I forgot to mention at the start of this meeting. Councillor Daniel Allen is absent with regrets. So can you please record that in the minutes? Item number 7, new business. Request for decision, naming of private road. Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our GIS technician has filed a letter with council regarding a recommendation to name a private road, and it's to do with the number of residents that are now on what was a driveway. And so in the letter to council, it's confirmed that what the community would like to name their road does meet with the parameters and the guidelines required. So the recommendation is that it be named Vernon's Lane, and it's in Pleasant Valley.
Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton. Do we have a seconder? Second by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 7.2, the first reading of the marketing levy bylaw M-628-23. We have with us the Deputy CAO. And Neil as well, in case there's other questions.
Okay, yeah.
Just hit your button. There you go.
Okay. I asked Neil to be here as well in case there were questions that he would be better able to answer than I would be. So at the November regular council meeting, there was some discussion on the need for a new bylaw because of changes in provincial legislation. And a motion was passed directing staff to amend the current marketing and promotions levy bylaw. So what you have before you is a new bylaw that would repeal and replace the current bylaw. There are similar bylaws going forward in the municipality of Argyle and the town of Yarmouth at the same time. I'll just point out a couple of the changes in here. Under definitions in accommodations, it refers to the Nova Scotia Tourist Accommodations Registration Act, and that is in the process of going through some amendments right now, and one of those amendments is a name change to, I believe, Short-Term Rentals Registration Act, but that's not official yet, so once that becomes official, the new name will have to be put into this document. Another change from the current bylaw is that there's a requirement right now for the building to have 20 or more rooms, so that requirement is being taken out of this draft. Part 4 lists the levy at 3% of the purchase price, whereas previously it was $2 per room. And the rest of the bylaw is very similar. The only real change is interest, Part 12. The old bylaw referred to 4% above prime, whereas this bylaw
Discussion. I do have one comment. Item 5.1.3, a person who is accommodated in a room for more than 30 consecutive days the marketing levy shall not apply to. Is that an industry standard, or, because we do know sometimes we have longer term people that come down and rent, whether it's rent a room or a B&B or something like that. Is that typical across the
I
province?
believe that's what's in the provincial legislation right
I
now.
can speak to that, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
so I think one of the things that the province of Nova Scotia heard when they engaged on the proposed shift in terms of short-term marketing levies was the fact that there's a housing crisis in Nova Scotia. And so it's understood that some of these types of accommodation assets are being used as a housing, as opposed to being used by short-term guests who are using services and infrastructure in communities and therefore paying a levy to support the use of those. So the 30-day piece is a bit of a nod towards something that might be being used more as a housing as opposed to a short-term accommodation.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, question being called, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Neil. Item 7.3, the draft administration building policy A-024-09.
There are just some updates that we're suggesting to this policy. We have some internal guidelines that we've been following, and we thought that there were some things in there that would be important to have in policy. I'll just point some of those out. Part 3, holidays and weekends, we're recommending that that we state in there that the rooms would not be available holidays and weekends, and that's because we don't have any staff in the building at those times. In Part 4, we've made mention of the level of accessibility for some of the rooms. Under fees in Part 5, we've noted that the fees are waived for not-for-profit community groups. And also that if the meeting would run later than 5 o'clock, that we need to have a municipal staff member or a municipal councillor in the building or in the room. Part 6, cleanup, just that there may be a fee applied if the group doesn't leave the room clean the way they found it. And Part 7, IT equipment, we don't want people moving the IT equipment around without assistance from a staff member. And the rest is the same.
Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Deputy CEO. I'll move that the Municipal District of Yarmouth accept the amendments to the Administration Building Policy A-024-09 and adopt the new policy as circulated.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Patty Durkee. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, council, this is a regular council meeting, so we've reached our 2-hour time limit. Does someone wish to make a motion to extend the meeting? Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham to extend the meeting as per our council policy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I am sorry.
That's okay. I voted in favor, but you'll have to continue without me. I have an appointment at 5 o'clock that I can't miss, so probably about
Yep.
10 minutes I'll be leaving. Thank you.
Okay. So that motion did carry unanimously. No, just notify me and... Item 7.4, the draft fees policy F-044-02.
The only change we're suggesting in there is under the meeting rooms section, and that just refers to the policy we just talked about, the administration building policy. Right now, there's a note in there that there would be a fee for after hours, and that comes from quite a while ago when we would require a staff member to come in if a group wanted to book one of the rooms in the building. So it's just not needed in there anymore at this time.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make the motion that we adopt the fees, the amendments to the fees policy F-04402 as amended.
Okay, a
I think
motion
I
on the-
said amended twice.
Motion on the floor.
You
Do I
only
have a
need one.
seconder? Second by Councillor Nick Hilton. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 7.5, Draft Parkland Dedication Policy P-828-22.
So the changes that we're recommending in here are really just around some clarity and to mirror what's in the legislation, in the MGA. We've used the word shall instead of may in the first point, because that's what it states in the legislation. And in 2.1.4 and 5, it's just to clarify how the funds can be used. We're recommending removing 2.1.2, which is regarding the interest on those funds, and that's from a recommendation from our Director of Finance, who felt that administratively this would be very difficult to do, especially given the amount of money we'd be talking about.
Deputy Warden?
I guess, I guess what I'll say is, but before I make the motion,
No, hit your mic again. Flash. There, hit, you're
got her,
on.
okay, yeah, I knew there was something odd about it, but, in any event, yeah, I'll move that the municipality district of Yarmouth approve as circulated the edits or amendments to Parkland Dedication Policy P-828-22, and just also would like to comment before we look for a seconder, that we discussed during the public hearing potentially looking at the policy more broadly, so I'll make that mention as well.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 7.6, the draft grants policy G-068-09. Our Community and Economic Development Officer, Mark Lynn's here with us, if there's any questions. Item 9.6.1, the draft grant scoring matrix tool. Mark, can you hit the, there you go.
Thank you very much. I trust that everybody can see the grant evaluation form in the agenda. So if you like, I could walk you through it, or if it's self-explanatory, which it might not be, I can answer any questions that you might have. So it's however you would like to proceed. Would you like me to walk you through it? Sure, okay. So name of the organization goes up top, the amount requested just below that, type of organization, whether it's charitable, nonprofit, or other, usually a society, and then proof of status. I asked that question to see if they have it, and usually that would be a registry, a joint stock, or a CRA number you would put there. And then you check all that applies as far as the type of the grant goes, whether it's operating, capital, parkland, placemaking, or tourism. And you can see here where the proof of charitable status or nonprofit status, you would be awarded a point if you did provide that, if you could provide that. And then we've got these mandatory items here that staff likes to look for. I come from the banking world. I was there for only 2 years actually, but financial statements and budgets and such shed a lot of light on an organization. You can learn a lot from it. So this is what these mandatory items are kind of looking for. First, we want to know was the grant the grant application, was it on time? Do they have a list of the board of directors, a proposed budget? Do they have financial statements? Do they outline other revenue sources? Because we like, yes, we like to be a partner with organizations, but we also like it if they have gone out and searched for other partnerships as well. So you would award points for each of those. And then if they're a recurring grant applicant, We ask if if they've submitted a final report, and if they have, they receive a point for that. If it's not applicable, also, they would receive a point, and if they didn't, if they had to, if they were supposed to file a report and didn't, then they would get a 0. Then we ask, is it a capital grant, and if so, have they provided 2 quotes? They would be awarded a point, they would be deducted a point if they didn't. And then we get into the parkland and placemaking section of this grant form. And here, in our policy, they must demonstrate a maintenance plan, and they must provide or prove that they have other funding, be it provincial, federal, or in-kind, and they would receive points for those if they do. And to keep the placemaking and parkland grants on par with the rest of the other types of grants, tourism, operating and capital, you would actually award 2 points to an organization if they were not parkland and placemaking. And what that does, it allows you to go and take all those applications, if you like, and you can compare them all against each other. Different types of grant applications can be compared as one. It's up to you. Or you can then go and compare all the placemaking ones with just the placemaking ones, and all the tourism ones with the tourism, and the parkland with the parkland, and so on. So you would total up a score here. These are the mandatory items. And then we call them non-mandatory items. But it's ones that, it's these items that show whether they align with what the council is trying to do. So the first one is strategic alliance. The organization or the ask for the project that they're doing for the organization, is it vital? Is it vital, which is to say, is it fundamental to council's strategic plan? If so, they get 3 points for that. If it's notable, it's a solid fit with council's strategic plan, they would have a 2. Non-critical, some relevance to council's strategic plan, they'd be awarded a 1. And then alignment, augmentation with or 2 Modi services. Service Modi would otherwise provide. If it's something that we would provide, if they didn't, they get 3 points for that. If it's a service that we might otherwise provide, they get a 2. And again, no mandate or not able due to legislation, we would receive 1 point. Clientele served, it's kind of important that we like to know that, that the work that these organizations are doing will benefit the municipal residents. So if they do, if it's exclusive to Modi residents, they'll get 3 points. If it's mostly, it's 2. If it's somewhat, it's 1. And if none, they would get a 0 for that. And then we'd like to know whether this addresses some accessibility needs. If it does, it gets a point. Or an underserved community, elderly, youth, low income, or diversity, it would receive a point for that. And then the financial need. We're just wondering, we're making an assessment on whether they really need this money, or if it would be a nice have. And if the need is high, they get 1 point, and if it's low, they get 0. So you total up all those points, and they need to reach 11. If they don't make 11, then we would suggest that we decline it, and we could coach them after as well and say, next year maybe look at this, do this, or whatever. But if it is 11 or above, then we go to the next section, which is considering the amount to give. So you take the amount requested, which was on the first page, and you put it in that line. If it's under 10,000, you would go to the next section, and we'll talk about that in a minute. If it's over 10,000, then you go and you can see that the maximum amount that you would consider would be 10% of the budget if it's operating, and 25% if it's capital. And this is coming from the grant policy itself, these percentages. So then you would go and put that maximum amount considered in those columns. And then we go down to the awarded section, and there you've got the total score, you've got your mandatory score and the non-mandatory score, and then a rank comparison. Now, I would do this rank comparison before you folks sat in your grants meeting, and you would basically rank them by total score, mandatory score, and non-mandatory score. And again, you would tell me whether we're doing it all as a whole, or if we're just ranking placemaking with placemaking, tourism with tourism, and whatnot. And then from there, depending on what their score is, then as you can see, you've got 11 to 14, you would consider up to 25% of the amount. 14 to 17, they would consider 75% of the amount, and 17 to 20, you consider up to 100% of the amount. Now, that's up to. It doesn't mean that you have to consider that full amount. And then you decide, then that will tell you how much gets awarded, and you go from there. Bit quick.
Madam CEO?
Sure. So I'd just like to provide a little context in that, so this work is coming back to council because it was requested by council for staff to take a look at providing some sort of framework to help council navigate the material that they receive under the grants program. So that's why this is being provided. There are some amendments to the grants policy that go along with the recommendation on this form. So in item 3.8 of the grants policy, there was some language that guided installments when council wanted to award larger programs. And we're recommending to council that we take away the finite installment amounts and just allow council to work with an applicant on installments that make sense for the project. For example, some projects have most of the expenses early on and very few expenses later. So they may need their municipal support earlier as opposed to later. So that's an example of a way that we can maybe just take a broader lens and try to be more supportive on applications. And then in 4.1.5, we're bringing in the language around the parkland dedication because that's an additional category in the policy. And in 4.2, we're just improving the language a little bit, pulling in the criteria for Part 5 to apply. And the other amendments are related to bringing in the parkland dedication program from the subdivision bylaw. And so the proposal that's before you, Mr. Chair and Council, is, it's a recommendation on a way to pre-vet the applications. There's some recommendations in there in terms of up to, awards up to certain amounts. But the grants program continues to be council's area of service to its municipality, where it has 100% autonomy from provincial legislation. So this was just a tool that was requested and being provided for your discussion today.
Deputy Warden?
Yeah, and I appreciate the preparation of the documents, especially the scoring matrix. Having said that, I do believe that council should use the document for guidance. But at the end of the day, I'm not certain if by adopting the policy that we're going to follow the matrix, to the letter. For instance, mandatory items, if they're mandatory, we're scoring them. So, like if it's not on time, would we? The question would be, if they've got, I don't know, there's six items, 6 boxes there. So if they have a 5 out of 6, but it's not on time, is that? I mean,
They would get 5 out of 6,
Right.
yes, if it's not on time, correct.
For mandatory items. But what I'm saying is, I'm reading into this document that there's not, even though we're scoring it, there's not a mandatory way on top of that, overlaid on top of that council would approach this, right? Like, I mean, we're getting scores, and we're gonna use the scores to inform a decision, not to drive the decision 100%.
As the CAO pointed out, it's completely discretionary for you folks, yes. This is to help you out in that process, though, should you so choose, yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, to the Deputy Warden's point, that's why the scoring matrix is not part of the policy. It's not even referred to in the policy document.
They came together.
Yep.
Yeah, from my understanding, the whole reasoning behind this is I wanted a little bit of clarity to help me get better informed, number one. Number two, some of these groups that ask for funding, I really have no idea about. However, others may. So for me, it's just a tool to enhance my decision-making when we go forward with that policy. But like, as the CEO said, that has no bearing on the policy. It's not mentioned in there. Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The $1,000 for the quote, the 2 quotes, if you need 2 quotes, How did you come up with the $1,000?
It's in the policy.
That was in the policy too?
Yeah,
I just
it's
know,
policy.
like, we're talking about other programs that are putting people in place to help with things like this, with putting together grants, and they're removing things like the need for 2 quotes because it's so difficult to get contractors to quote something that they know they're not going to get.
Well,
So-
I'm sorry.
No, I think you see where I'm going with that.
No, I do, and duly noted, and I know because I try to get quotes as well, but it is in the policy, so I had to put it in the,
Should we up that number, remove that number?
That's-
Any thoughts?
I can speak to that, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair. So if you try to think about the requirements on a municipality in terms of getting quotes and providing fair access on the part of the marketplace to work with the municipality, we start talking about numbers in the $5,000 range in relation to our procurement process. And if you think about generally accepted accounting principles in our financial reporting and accounting manual, we start talking about capital figures north of $5,000. And I would agree with Councillor Hilton, it's very difficult to get companies to bid jobs right now. They're just so busy. I would agree that maybe there's some room for some consideration there.
How would I make a motion to change that number to, in the policy? We're reviewing the policy as we speak, right?
That's
No,
right. Yep.
We're going to be reviewing the policy in the, so we are.
Yeah, they're both there.
Yeah, they're both there.
So I would make a recommendation or a motion to increase that number to $5,000.
So amend 5.4 from 1,000 to 5,000, Councillor Hilton?
If that's your, yes, yes,
I actually have it up here, so it would be 5.4.
yeah.
Applications and capital grants over $1,000 where applicable must be accompanied by at least 2 quotes to cost. So the motion that you just made, Councillor Hilton, was to increase that to $5,000.
Yes, I just believe it creates a little bit of flexibility for these organizations. I've heard it from residents, part of the seniors programs that require 2 quotes, it's just impossible. So it's delayed them upwards of a year trying to get them, to, like the heat pump programs and things like that. It's delayed them significantly trying to get their grants in because they can't get the 2 quotes.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden. Any discussion on that? Councillor Hilton, you still have the floor.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Deputy Warden?
Yeah, are we gonna move? past that?
Unless there's no discussion on this, we'll vote on the motion that's currently on the floor.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so there's no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
And Mr. Warden, I'll move that we approve the grants policy as circulated with the, obviously with the change that the motion just undertook. Grants policy G-068-09, and that we accept the draft grant evaluation form as a guide to support the policy.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Any discussion on that? Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the staff for pulling this together. It did address a number of the concerns. I think Sherry probably regrets not being here for this because she brought up a number of them. But it will help us. I know grants are our thing, but it was very, what's the right word?
Difficult?
Yeah, difficult, but it was subjective. It wasn't objective enough, and this provides some objectivity to something that myself as council probably needed. So I appreciate the work that you put into this.
Oh, thank you. No, and it will help me too in my job as well to present to you the case of each applicant, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion? I will say this much. We could have done this motion, and then if you wanted to amend the motion for that item 5.4, we could have done it that way, but it doesn't matter. Both same outcome, different course. All right, is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, item number 8 for action, 8.1.1, letter from Terry Murphy. You all have that in your package. What is the pleasure of council? Deputy Warden?
Yeah, and again, the letter is asking council to make an amendment to agriculture, you know, our bylaw on agriculture, and the amendment, I guess, what the suggested amendment would be, you know, to allow no development of a fin fish farm within 2 kilometers of coastal waters and or coastal lands and the boundaries of the municipality. And you know, everybody's got an opinion on this, but I think given our current agriculture bylaw, I think there's like 0 probability or very near 0 probability that there'll be a fin fish farm developed in the municipality district of Yarmouth, because our current bylaw, which we just passed, says that you may not release any, I'm paraphrasing, correct me if I'm wrong, no effluent may be released into the marine environment. So given that, I don't see any probability that there'd be any development of a fin fish farm in the municipality district of Yarmouth. Probably no aquaculture, but having said that, you know, it's so unlikely that I don't think any amendment to our current bylaw is necessary.
Councillor Hilton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Terry, for submitting your letter. Terry's here with us today, and I had a conversation with him earlier today, and I think it's really, the letter is to help support the fact that, you know, the residents, in this case of Chebogue, stood up against what was the aquaculture farm, proposed aquaculture farm, not necessarily for the reason that they didn't want the farm, but necessarily more the reason that they didn't like the type of system that the farm was. So I do believe that we made the right decision not allowing wastewater to be returned to the marine environment. I do believe that was heavily influenced by the community and the work that they did, and I thank them for that. Saying that, the proposed motion that's in the letter, moving it 2 kilometers away from the ocean, I have no issue with that, but it just puts it closer to the lakes and rivers and streams that we have. So I'm also in agreement with Councillor Cunningham, Deputy Warden, that I believe that we have stronger stronger rules in our land use bylaw, that you're not going to see a fin fish farm that uses ocean water and returns ocean water. To that extent, I do believe we strengthen that, and I guess I kind of have to agree with Councillor Cunningham that making that stronger would probably limit land use in a way that probably isn't appropriate in that 2 kilometer zone. But I do support Terry, and I do support the community in the fact that we made the right call not allowing discharge into our marine environment, and I'll continue to advocate for that.
What I see this as, since I see no other microphones flashing, is a request to change our MPS LUBs. As far as I'm concerned, I think that should go back to the Planning Advisory Committee to see if they would make that recommendation to change the MPS LUB, because that's basically what he's asking here. Typically, I don't make motions, but I certainly can. I'll make a motion that we send this letter from Mr. Terry Murphy back to Planning Advisory Committee for discussion and debate.
I'm okay with discussion and debate.
Okay, a motion seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? So you all clear what I've asked in that motion? Send it back to PAC to have discussion, see if they think that this is a good idea, and they're the ones that can actually dig into it a little bit more. So, no more discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? A vote of 4 to 1. Motion is carried. Deputy Warden, would you like your name recorded?
Yes, certainly. I mean, the reason I voted, pretty clear, the reason I voted against it. We just went through the whole process of and expense, by the way. This will cost additional dollars if we have to employ a professional to look into this, which we will, likely. I think it's repetitive, and for the reason Councillor Hilton also agreed with me on that there's the protection's there. So I'm disappointed in the outcome, but PAC will look at it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 8.1.2, Engage Nova Scotia 2024 Quality of Life Initiative. Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the NSFM conference at the Digby Pines, I believe it was this spring, Engage Nova Scotia presented a tool that they've been working on in collaboration with a number of other partners, designed to provide information to communities to help them understand who needs what in their community, who values what in their community, who's worried about what in their community, who is excited about what in their community. And that work was done a number of years ago, and across Nova Scotia, people from Nova Scotia who chose to answer the survey, it was sporadic in terms of who answered the survey. So for example, there was a high rate of response in certain counties in Cape Breton, a very low rate of response from residents in Nova Scotia in Yarmouth County. And what Engage Nova Scotia would like to do is they would like to reissue the survey, re-engage with Nova Scotians to understand these quality of life questions. And so what their ask is of municipal council is twofold. Number one, they would like the municipal council to partner with them to spread the word. It's up to people to decide whether or not they want to respond to the survey, but Engage Nova Scotia would like to enlist your help making sure the word is spread and that people who want to respond are aware of the survey and know how they can respond. In addition to that, because the information that could be provided through a survey that has a good response rate could be valuable to council in terms of understanding some of the issues that we heard about today in our presentation on youth well-being. Could be valuable to council in helping determine where you want to go in the future or where future councils might want to go with respect to their strategy, with respect to providing services that their citizens are saying that they would like to have. So there's an ask that municipalities in Nova Scotia consider contributing 50 cents per resident toward launching the survey in 2024-25. So the District of Yarmouth has approximately 10,200 residents, so that would be a contribution of about $5,100 on the part of the District of Yarmouth. And it would be for next fiscal year.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to our CAO. Thank you for bringing that forward, because quite frankly, it was very informative. The information that was shared with regards to that survey and information was really helpful in looking at quality of life and things like questions that people have or concerns that people have, and where we're going in the right direction and where we're not going in the right direction. So I think personally, if we could get that for our area, it would be helpful, and it gives the public an opportunity to comment, do the survey, and provide information on how they feel our direction is going. So on that note, I would make the motion that we contribute to continuing or to engaging with Engage. Oh, here I go again. Engaging with Engage Nova Scotia to administer the quality of life, or and support the quality of life survey in our area.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden. Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Yeah, and to Councillor Durkee's point, she made the motion, I second it, but one of the pieces there is democratic engagement that they're looking at collecting data on, which we've said we need to do, and I think the public's been pretty strong with that they want us to engage better, and so clearly this is one small thing we can do, and obviously Engage Nova Scotia has a lot of ability to reach out to people in our region and beyond, and the comparative information will also be useful. So we'll know how we're doing versus other jurisdictions. So that's why I'll be voting in favor of the motion.
Any more discussion? Councillor Hilton?
Just through you to the CAO, do you see a benefit to this, for staff and the work that's being done here? $5,000 is a lot of money to ask for a survey.
It is. What I find particularly interesting, the pages aren't numbered, but there are several pages in the package that was filed and is available on the public agenda that lists concerns of residents. And some of the areas of concerns that residents list include concerns for public safety, difficulty making desired or needed purchases, difficulty paying bills on time, unsatisfied with life, food insecurity. They don't feel like they benefit from public policy. All of those kinds of concerns help inform council in terms of, you have a finite amount of money to invest every year in the community. And answers to a survey like this might help council understand if more investment needs to be made in recreation, or if more investment needs to be made in policing, or if more investment needs to be made in providing wastewater and water. So it can help inform those decisions, and it can help inform council in terms of what the priorities are of the community. So depending on the rate of response to the survey and what survey respondents say, we may find that the community would very much like the municipality to spend a greater percentage of the operating budget on youth initiatives as opposed to something else. And so I think it could be very helpful for council.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would also help drive our strategic plans in the future. And I think if we were to do this on our own, it would cost us a lot more money.
All right, any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Hey, item 8.2, correspondence for information. There's 4 pieces. Next one is item number 9 in camera. However, I'd entertain a motion for 5 minutes recess before we continue on with the in-camera session. Moved by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.